Because that's another thing. We didn't have sentences. They didn't say, Joe, you're in for 6 months. Mike, you're in for 12. In this place, we were just there until they decided to let us leave. That was it.
They kicked your room door in at 2 a.m?
Yeah, basically it was like, I mean, to put it short, like my mom, I had a trial. I was gonna have a trial, and I had gone through arbitration, and I was about to get, the jury was gonna come out, and I guess my mom, like in desperation, like someone came up to her like after the arbitration, and they were like, "Yo, check out these pamphlets. If you send your kid to one of these, this judge is gonna, take it easy." And so she chose one, and it was called Elan, E-L-A-N. And the thing about Elan was like, so she signed some paper. I didn't know anything. I mean, I'm just a teenager, I'm just going to school, doing what normal teenagers do. I mean, I smoked a lot of weed, but like, I mean, I was basically, 16. So, anyway, that's a relevant detail to something I'm about to say. But so I'm basically in my bed thinking that, thinking I had a court date at a certain time, thinking that I was just gonna go to sleep and go to school the next day. And then I woke up, and it was like 3:43 or 3:42 in the morning, and I'm a real light sleeper, so I was like, why did I wake up? Like, what triggered this? I really remember thinking that, and then I looked over, and I saw and I heard just like an explosion as the door to my room just like flew into the fucking room. Like the bolts exploded off, the hinges exploded off and shit. Like it was crazy. And so I'm thinking this is a dream. And if I hadn't been thinking this is a dream, what I should have done is I should have gone for the window, because like I said earlier, I was smoking a lot of weed back then, and I would have the window open in my room. So basically in my room, I always had the window open with no screen. Just like to hang out my hand and the joint out the window, completely out the window. So my window was open and there was no screen, and I could have just bolted and just jumped out the window, and they never would have caught me. But of course I thought to myself, nah, this is a fucking dream. Like, what? And by that point, these two dudes were on me. These were like goons, like they were dressed in like black jumpsuits and shit. Like it was like two huge Italian looking dudes. They had zip ties and shit, so they just zip tie me up, hog tie me. They're carrying me out. I'm thinking to myself, okay, murderers robbed our house. I mean, this is the fucking suburbs, I'm thinking, all right, well, there's murderers robbing our house, and now they're taking me. Fucking got my hands tied behind my back and shit. I was screaming. I was actually screaming, like, help, help, like anyone would normally do in that situation. And actually, I remember lights being turned on and shit. Like, as they were taking me out in the driveway and throwing me in a van, I remember seeing lights turning on as I'm screaming, help, help! So, I don't know what those people saw. Like, they just saw some kid getting chucked in a van, and the van peeling out. So, that was pretty crazy. So, I'm in the back of this van. I don't know what the fuck's going on. They don't say shit. I still got my hands zipped up behind me. Eventually I fell asleep, and I slept for a long time, like, which was surprising because I was in a pretty compromised situation, but I slept for like 8 hours. And when I woke up, I was still in that motherfucker. They were still driving up the highway. It was like 11 o'clock. It was a lot later than three. They've been driving for a fucking long time. And I'm so we ended up in Maine, which is pretty far from where I'm from, which I'm not gonna say for now, but we ended up it was fucking Maine, and it was middle of nowhere. So this van is like going through the trees and shit and pulling onto a dirt road, and I'm like, where the fuck does this dirt road go? Like, I remember looking out the window like, let me see if I can, I remember thinking to myself, I need to keep track of what turns this shit is making. for when I run, you know. And so, actually, a funny story which I never really said to anybody was, I also ran at one point from the van, because at one point I woke up in the van and the guys were like, hey, you want to smoke, do you smoke cigarettes? And I was like, yeah, sure. So one of those goons went and bought me a pack of cigarettes, and I was like, okay, cool. So I thought, So after like the appropriate amount of time, I was like, I need to use the bathroom, man. I got to take a piss. And they opened up the fucking van door, and the guy was behind me, and I fucking just went for it, you know. I just fucking went for the woods, like, I'm out. Like, I don't know where I am. I don't know who these people are who kidnapped me in the night, but I'm fucking out. But he fucking snatched me. Like, the guy was prepared for it. Anyway, we pull up into this fucking place in Maine, and shit is fucked, man. It looked like a bunch of trailer parks. It looked like a trailer park. Everything was fucked up. Nothing was new or shiny or good looking. Everything was like fucking torn down looking and stuff. It looked like poverty, man. It was like without a doubt, like, this place is decay. Some guys came, you know, but it was weird because it was like an adult and a kid. It was like a man and a kid. And that was weird to me, you know, because, like, you know, that was a weird combination, because this was the first thing that something was weird about this place. It was like, it's not like the kid had more authority than the adult, you know? Like, the kid was saying shit. The kid was like, come with me, now, you know what I mean? And the adult was like, you know, it was like they were equals. It was just a weird...
How old was that kid, you think? You was 16, how old was that kid, like?
To me, he was like 14. I mean, it turned out he was kind of like more of an extreme example of this particular case, but he was like a 14-year-old kid who had already been in this place for like 15 or 16 months. This place he loved, which is in the middle of the woods in Maine.
Is it just like white kids? Is it a mixture of different races or what?
It was mostly white kids, to be honest with you. There was, you know, there was kind of like, it kind of would be like a suburban, like a typical suburban high school class, you know. It's like there was a few black kids, some Spanish kids, a couple Asians, but, you know, mostly people who were white, you know. But here's the thing that's interesting. It wasn't mostly like middle class or wealthy white people. It was the majority of everybody was like a very insane mix of like people who were from people who had the least. Like, I'm talking people who were beneath poverty. You know, it was full of kids from group homes who were like wards of the state, kids who'd been given away. You know what I mean? It was full of like you know, foster kids and shit and orphans. Like, but it also, crazy enough, and you can look this stuff up. It sounds like it's made up, but it's not made up. You can really Google this. You can Google this stuff, and you'll find out about Elan, E-L-A-N. It was like they marketed themselves very intelligently to very high class people. So they weren't even looking for middle class. They were trying to get wealthy people. So they marketed like, yes, this is the Rolls Royce of adolescent treatment centers. You know what I mean? Like, that's how they were actually pitching it.
That's what it was categorized as? An adolescent treatment center?
Yeah, something like that. But if you look it up on Wikipedia, you'll see that it was like a very like they had a very interesting like psychological aspect to it. I think it actually was registered as a behavior modification program as well. Like openly. Like, we are a behavior modification program. You know, anyway, so yeah, and they had this kind of like it was like a two-sided coin, you know. Like, they were smart enough to market it to people who were very rich, but at the same time they took any kid they could get. So they had all kind of deals with different states to get foster kids from group homes, kids from juvenile detention centers. There were schools that were involved. So if you were unlucky enough to go to like a certain school district that had a partnership with this place, it was like if you got expelled, you got sent there. like, which is crazy. Like,
what was the youngest kid you think they had there?
12, like 12. But the oldest kid was like 23. So I mean, it was like a real crazy mix.
So you said they came and got you from the van, and then where they took you?
Long story short, when I got into the house, you know, like any like kind of like institution, like they make you do the shower, like the lice shower with the nicks.
You said that those dudes eventually they told you what was up.
Yeah, basically. And the interesting thing was, so when I pretended to use the bathroom and then I tried to run and they grabbed me, and brought me back in the van and we started driving again. You know, they were kind of like, you know, do you want to know, you know, what's going on? Like, actually, like, they were not that bad. Like, at the time, it was the worst thing in my life. You know, I was like, I'm 16 years old. I just got snatched up. I don't even know where I'm going. And I thought these guys were fucking the worst. But they bought me a pack of cigarettes, and then they were like, listen, man, you're going to go to this place. It's got girls. It's boys and girls. Like, it ain't going to be that bad. They were like, there's going to be horseback riding. There's a lake you can swim in. Like, they were genuinely telling me, like, cool shit. Like, I mean, I wasn't down with it, but I was like, okay, at least I'm not being murdered. You know, at least I'm not being taken to fuck. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is
You
bad,
could tell that
but
they was hired contractors or something that had nothing to do with the actual program, right?
Exactly. Like, yeah, I mean, because like I said, it was sketchy, obviously, for me as a kid, but that particular time, that particular moment, but it got so much worse after that, that, like, that moment, actually, I remember fondly. I'm like, they bought me cigarettes, you know, that was really nice of them. So, yeah, when I got there, and I got snatched up by the real program, it was, like, insane, because I'm in this building, I got a lice shower, like they do, you know, all institutions, you know, they put me in the fucking lice shower. But when I got out of the lice shower, all my clothes were gone, right? Because the thing is, I also tried to run away when I got to the lawn. So I also tried to run away between them grabbing me from the van and getting to the house. You know what I mean? I mean, I'm not stupid, man. I'm always on the run. So I saw some hoods. I was like, I'm going for it. But they kept snatching me up, right? Because they had, like, that was the thing that was crazy, is that from my view, it looked like a trailer park. I didn't see any fences. I didn't see anything, electric fences or barbed wire or any shit like that. I just saw, like, a broken down ass trailer park, you know? So I was like, you know, I'm just gonna ditch this place, obviously, as soon as I can, which I did try to do a couple times. But because, listen to how crazy this is, because I tried to do those things, as soon as I got out of the shower, that first shower where they gave me the lice treatment, they had specific clothes I had to wear. They took my clothes, and they didn't give me the normal, like we didn't have, like, it wasn't like prison where we had, like, you have, like, outfits or anything, like, but we had very specific things we could wear and not wear. But so, like, most people would be wearing, like, a white shirt and, like, green pants or something, right? But I had to wear, because I was trying to run away, I had to wear a bright yellow shirt and pink, very short shorts. And, like girl shorts. They put me in pink girl shorts.
That shit ain't funny, but that's fucked up.
No, it's crazy. It's, like, crazy psychological shit. And they took my shoelaces. And it was like, this is what you're going to be on for the next few weeks until, like, we figure you out. And the thing that's crazy, it's like, it was the kids who did it. It wasn't like there was no, like, this wasn't a school. Like, it was called Elan school, but there was no school happening. There was no dorms where we all went in and studied. Like, there was no school at all. School happened at night, and it was only for a few hours. So most of the day, we just did crazy ass shit all day. But, like, for example, like when I was so basically, let me start back to where I was saying, I was in the bright clothes, yeah, and I'm in these bright clothes, and I'm like I'm not gonna wear this shit, you know what I mean? Like, and they're like, yes you are, you know what I mean? And at some point, I guess I just, okay, I will, because first off, there was no other clothes to put on. They were literally only ones. and they stole everything I had. So every single thing that I had come in there with in my pockets, all my jewelry, like I had some jewelry, like everything that I had on me, like just disappeared from that moment. And I'm in a yellow shirt and pink girl shorts. Yeah. So I'm like, what the? And my shoelaces are gone. So I'm like, well, I mean, think about it. A day before that, I was just in high school, just chilling. You know what I mean? And now I'm in the middle of the woods in Maine in a trailer, overcrowded with kids in pink girl shorts and a yellow shirt. And they're like, all right, like, come with us. And they're like, this is your big brother. And I'm like, what? They're like, this is the guy who's, like, in charge of you right now. Like, you got to stay within 1 foot of him. Like, if you go beyond 1 foot of him, like, some shit's going to happen to you. You know what I mean? So it was like, I'm thinking to myself, like, first off, I saw girls.
At this time, is still no adults around right now?
I had seen like one adult. I mean, okay, I had seen the adult who came and got me, and then I saw like one other adult. So I was like, why aren't all these kids running? Like, I thought this can't be that bad. I mean, I know I'm in some shitty clothes right now. This is like some kind of hazing, you know. But I thought, you know, it's like some kind of private military wilderness program type shit, and like this is like gonna be the hazing part, right? I'm new, they're putting me in these silly clothes, but you know, I figured that's where it was gonna end, you know, like, and you know, that's not that bad. You know, that's not that bad. So I'm just going along with the program and shit, but I didn't see any fucking adults really. I mean, it was clear that we could overpower them, because I mean, I was 16, but I would say the average age was 18. Like the majority of people in Elan were like 18. So these people were like in their prime. I mean, we easily could have overtaken those motherfuckers. The few adults who were there. But here's the thing, Laz. And I didn't really tell you about this part yet, but see, what happened was, to keep it brief, I'm sitting there in this living room, they called it the dining room, but it really was just the room that they squashed us all into. I mean, very small room with like 50, 60 kids in it, you know, boys and girls, but we were separated right down the middle. And it was like real militaristic. Like we had to look up front, we had to do all this shit. Like we there was no just sitting, you know, there was like all kinds of like rituals. You had to do certain things a certain way. But anyway, so my quote unquote big brother, he's like telling me, you know, he's like, Joe, look up front. And I'm like, look up front, you know, what? And I was like, Joe, stop looking at the girls, you know? And I'm like, don't look at girls. Like, who are you? Like, why are you talking to me? Like, you know, don't get up, Joe. So, you know, I'm like anyone else. I'm trying to test my limits. I'm like, how far can I go? Then I'm like, what's going on? You know, what the fuck's going on? So I'm sitting there, and then some adult walks in who I hadn't seen yet. In the comic, I call this dude Ron. So Ron comes in, and when this motherfucker Ron entered the room, it was like everyone just shut the fuck up. I mean, it was like even the insects, like every single thing got quiet. Like the second this guy entered like the consciousness of the room. And I remember thinking that was weird as fuck, because I'd never in my life experienced like a person who had that kind of like power. But this Ron entered, he was like 6'4", maybe 6'5". He was skinny as fuck. He was a heroin addict, like a heroin addict who was a heroin addict multiple times in his life. So his arms were covered with those track marks, you know. He had tattoos and shit, and he was just a scary looking motherfucker, like a biker. He was like a dude in a biker gang. And as soon as that guy walked in the room, it was like everyone just shut the fuck up. And this guy ended up, like, the thing about this place that I was at called Elan is that it basically was like a place that started out like in the 70s, and it was like a cult in the middle of the woods that was like basically pretending to be like a troubled youth program, but it was basically a cult, and it was becoming more of a cult year after year because what they were doing is they were hiring people from Elan to stay at Elan. So, like, you know, obviously there was this weird world that we all lived in that existed in the middle of the woods, but they had to keep it safe, so they couldn't bring in people from the outside. They did bring in a couple people from the outside, like not all the staff members were people from Elan, but most of them were, you know, and Ron was. So this guy Ron, who we're looking at, he's probably like 53, 54, but he had been in Elan when he was like 18, and he had just never left Elan. you know. And now here he was still, but he's in charge of shit. And like, so everyone just stopped, you know, when this guy came in, and then he screamed something which I didn't understand at the time, but it was something called a general meeting. Just to give you guys like kind of an example of like the kind of crazy shit we were getting into in the woods. It was called a general meeting, and I saw my first general meeting on my first day there and I saw 5 or 6 of them at a time some days, and I saw 2 or 3 on average, an average day. You know, they happened a lot. So this guy, he says, you know, get the broomstick. I'm thinking to myself, are they gonna, you know, stick a broomstick somewhere? You know, are they gonna hit him with the broomstick? So again, I was happy when they didn't. You know, I was like, okay, you know, good. They're not beating him.
What you mean? You said they called a general meeting and they had one particular kid singled out or something?
Yeah, they called a general meeting, and this guy Ron pointed at this one kid and was like, you go to the front. He went to the front, and then 2 other kids came with the broom and just stuck them. No, 2 other kids came, and each one stood on each side of him. You know what I mean? Like you better not move, motherfucker. You know what I mean? Like you got one kid on each side of you, bigger kids too. And you got a broom at your feet now, maybe like where your toes are, like a few inches from your toes. And then, you know, this guy Ron, he screamed, "Get your feelings off," which was like, we had all kinds of weird phrases we would say, and I didn't know what. You eventually figured out what they meant, but he said, "Get your feelings off," and then the whole room just like erupted. Like 60 kids, boys and girls, ages 13 to 23, just run into the broomstick, like to get as close to the broomstick as they could, so they could just be like hurling insults at this dude, like "fuck you, motherfucker," like "you piece of shit." Like, I mean, they would just go for it. You know, each person went for like 2-3 minutes. Like they're spitting at them, like spit's coming out of your mouth, like they're going up and down. They look crazy. It's like 4 or 5 kids in your face at a time, and it's weird, right? Because they're not touching you, right? They're not up there hitting them. They're not up there kicking them. I mean, some spit's getting on your face, but you know, no one is assaulting you. But psychologically, though, you know how weird it is to have that many people like up in your face, and you can't do shit. You can't react. You can't move a muscle. You can't make a facial expression. You can't roll your eyes. If you do any of those things, those guys on the side of you will grab you, and you will be thrown into isolation. And when we threw motherfuckers into isolation, we threw them into isolation for weeks at a time to start. Like we called it the corner, because not only were you in the isolation room, you were in the corner of the isolation room, and you were being watched. You cannot move from the corner. I mean, you can't just get up and walk around the room. You're in the goddamn corner of the room. And like I said, we threw motherfuckers in the corner for 2 or 3 weeks.
But what was it? It was inside one of the trailers?
It was like, I lived in, like, they weren't exactly trailers. There were trailers here and there, real trailers, but I would call it more like a house. Like, we lived in like these houses, although my house kind of did resemble a bunch of trailers that were all together, but basically, see, there was different houses, and I was put in house 8, right? And in my house there were 60 kids, and in house 8 we had these rooms upstairs on each side of the house, and so we would use those rooms as the corner rooms. But any room could be a corner room, really. We just needed the 4 walls. And like I said, here's what's crazy, right? The kids were doing it all. It wasn't like the adults were doing it and the kids were reluctantly doing it. It was like the kids were the ones who were the enforcers. The kids were the ones who were security. I mean, of course, there was a level of security after the kids, but I'm saying like the prisoners took care of the other prisoners almost like therapists. And the prisoners also enforced the rules on the other prisoners, like prison guards. So, like, as a person in Elan, the only way for you to move up in the program was to do shit like imprison others. You know what I mean? Like, you had to. It's like it's like the opposite of jail. We had to be snitches. Like, we were in a program where we literally had to snitch on people, because if we didn't snitch a certain amount, we would get in trouble for not snitching. You understand what I mean? Like it wasn't like we were doing it because we all wanted to move up in the ranks. It was like we were told, like, we actually had a thing in my house. It was called the incident book, and we would have to book incidents. And this was something that you had to do. It wasn't a choice. You had to book 3 or 4 incidents every single day. You didn't get to choose whether you did it one day or the next. You couldn't do 10 in one day and say, I'm taking today off. You had to do 5 a day. And we had all these kind of weird things that we had to do as part of our program. And it was like never ending. And like I said, the consequences for not doing things, like if you were like, fuck you, you're not doing this. Like, you know, what are you going to do about it? First, they would throw you in the corner. Okay, let's just do a thought exercise, right? Let's do a thought exercise that a person might have. They say, if it were me, I would just be like, fuck you guys. I'm not doing what the fuck you're saying. Drop slips or book incidents, whatever crazy ritual, you know. I'm not doing that. They're like, oh, you're not going to do that? All right, well, general meeting. Now you're up there with the broom in front of you, and you're like getting yelled at by all these kids. And let's say you're thinking, I don't give a fuck about getting yelled at by some kids. Like, they're not touching me. They're just yelling at me. Well, I'm just going to tell them to go fuck themselves, right? So you're telling them now, oh, fuck you. You're telling them fuck you back, right? The 2 guys on the side grab you. You're in isolation now. So you're sitting in the corner of a room, and you're being watched in that room by another kid. And that kid's been told he sits in the corner, and that's all he does, and he sleeps in the corner, and he eats in the corner. And he's going to be there for 2 or 3 weeks until we decide whether he's going to be there another 2 or 3 weeks or he can get out.
Would they make him sit in a chair in the corner?
Chair in the corner and sleep on a mattress on the floor in the corner. And that was your life for, again, 2-3 weeks at a time. And then if you fucked around, they just kept extending it. But anyway, let me say this, right? So let's say you go, I'm a badass. No one's doing this shit to me. So you're in the corner, and you got this kid in the corner watching you. So let's say you just wait until he gets a little bit tired, and then you just jump him, right? Here's the thing. See, now you've broken one of what Elan calls the cardinal rules, which is no drugs, no sex, and no violence. Those are the 3 cardinal rules that they told us. You've just broken no violence, right? And what that means is, first off, if you try to run, you're not going to get very far because there's people in the woods, too. It ain't just kids in a house. There's motherfuckers in the woods from Maine, hunters and shit, hired by Elan. Motherfuckers are going to smell people in the woods. They're going to get you, you know what I mean? But what are they going to do to you back at my house? Well, what they'll do to you is they're going to say, you broke our no violence rule. You're going in the ring. You think the ring? The fuck is the ring? So if you're anything like me, I'm thinking to myself, you know what? I'll put on some boxing gloves, get into a little bouncy ring. Like, that sounds pretty dope, actually. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I'm a 16-year-old kid. I'm a boy. You know, I got, you know, I'm not against fighting some motherfucker. You know, or just kind of just exercising in a way. Didn't seem like, you know, that bad to me. But then I actually saw it, and basically what it is there's no ring per se. There's not like a boxing ring. There's no structure. They just take a bunch of kids, like, because again, it's all kids. So they just take like 12 kids, put them in a ring, put them in a circle, put those 12 kids in a circle, and then you're in the middle of the circle. And you do have boxing gloves, so at least they gave you that, and you have little headgear things, you know, I guess, so you don't die. And then there comes a kid in, right? And he's got gloves on and he's got the headgear on. And here's the crazy thing is these rings, they were totally out in the open and sanctioned. I mean, they were part of the program. I mean, it wasn't like they were hiding it and doing this crazy. It wasn't like these people in the woods were hiding this shit. This shit was like on documents. Like, this place Elan has the ring where the staff member comes out, and one of the adults came out, pretended to have a microphone in his hand, and started saying, in this corner is Mike. Mike is, you know, like, literally, like, this was, I was sitting there thinking, like, is this happening? Like, what dimension am I in right now? Like, how much weed did I smoke where I ended up having this hallucination? But it was like, obviously, I mean, I can remember pinching myself in this place, like, holy fuck, like, am I seeing what I'm seeing? Like, no one will ever believe me. Like, no one will ever believe me that these things happen. So it's like I said, like 12 kids in a ring, an adult comes out, pretends to be the fucking announcer. He says, all right, when I say ding, the fight starts. When I say ding, the fight ends. He says ding. You two start fighting, which is fine, you know. You're fine because, you know, maybe you want to fight. So you're fighting for a minute, 2 minutes. He says ding, it's over. So the kid who you just fought against, he goes out. But then there's another kid, he's already ready. And he just says ding. Like, there is no, like, fanfare. There's no, like, let's talk again. It just goes ding. So then now you're fighting the second kid. So you're fighting him for 2 or 3 rounds, or 2 or 3 minutes. You're fighting him, you know, and then they say ding, and that ends. And then that kid leaves, and another kid is right away in. Another kid is in. And now you're fighting that kid. And basically this happens until you're just done. I mean, you fight 9, 10, 12 kids. I mean, anyone who thinks that this isn't going to fuck them up has never been in a fight before. You know what I mean? Fights are endurance. You know what I mean? You fight somebody for 2 or 3 minutes, that's a long fucking time to fight somebody. You know what I mean? And now you're fighting people, you know, you're tired. You get no rest. But the people are coming in fresh over and over and over again. So that's what the ring was. And remember, this is like boys, girls. I mean, there are girls in the ring. Like, this girl goes in the ring, a bunch of girls beat the shit out of her. This boy goes in the ring, a bunch of boys beat the shit out of her. I mean, it wasn't like a gender thing. Like, it happened to everyone. If you were 13, it happened to you. If you were 19, it happened to you. And that was when I realized, like, this is not just some normal kind of shit I'm seeing right now. And you know, actually a very interesting aspect. I didn't mention it yet, but I'm making a comic about this. You know, it's Elan, www.elan.school. And I'm only mentioning that now because I'm saying that basically in my comic, I don't just stay during my time. I kind of go back a little bit and describe it a little bit earlier because I was in Elan in the 90s. But Elan opened, like, I forget when, it was like 1971 maybe, or 1970. But basically, in the 70s, when people like Ron, my staff, when people like Ron were in Elan, it was so much worse. It was like, you actually really had to worry about violence and rape and everything back then.
And he was telling y'all that?
So for him, it was like, for him, we had it easy. For him, it was like, y'all motherfuckers just have the ring. Like, y'all are lucky. Back in my day, you know, it was like we threw kids in isolation and shit. And then he'd be like, well, back in my day, we didn't let him even use the bathroom. You know, like back in my day, we made him shit in the corner. Like, we didn't even bring him to the toilet. So that's how these people slowly got twisted, right? Because it was like they were abused, and then now they see less abuse, but so they're like, okay, this is fine. This is fine. It's a crazy, twisted kind of like evil making more evil, you know?
Yeah,
Wow.
that shit is crazy, bro.
But yeah, in the 70s, it was real crazy. They used to put people in costumes and stuff. Like, they would make someone the house dog, so they would put that person in a dog costume, and they'd have to eat from a bowl off the ground. They'd be chained, like a dog was chained, like to something, like the way you just like have a dog with a doghouse. They'd have to sleep in the doghouse outside. This is in Maine, like in winter. These people had no bounds. Like, people died in Elan. Like, kids went in the ring and died. Like, and then Elan just covered it up. Like, I mean, there's documented cases of shit like that happening. Like, people were, you know, like I said, when I was there in the 90s, it was pretty damn bad.
That's crazy. Like, I thought you was talking about the 80s, bro. You was in there in the 90s. Shit like that was going on in the 90s. Like, what year?
You know something real crazy? I'll just say the late 90s for now, mid to late 90s. But you know what's real crazy is that Elan didn't even close until like maybe 2011, if I got that number right. So it was 2011 when it even finally closed.
Yo, I'm gonna keep it real, bro. Parents were supposed to go to jail for putting their kids in shit like that.
Yep.
Straight up. If you putting your kid, but maybe some parents didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
But maybe some did. Were you allowed to communicate, call home, write home?
Well, that was one of the most interesting aspects of the program, was that in the beginning, everything was monitored. So basically, it was like we never could just call home or write home or have any communication with the outside world. So we had telephones in the house, but the telephones only went to a switchboard. So even if you managed to just like gas every single person in the house except for yourself, if that were even possible, and grab a phone, the phone would only call a switchboard, which is one of the trailers up away from Elan, away from my house at least. So like I said, even if I would have grabbed a phone in my house, it wouldn't have done anything except go to a switchboard. But when you, like, let's say I called my parents, like in the beginning, the first time I called my parents, I was on speakerphone. I'd spent days being told what to say and what not to say, and they practiced it over and over and over again. And me having a successful like phone conference with my parents meant like maybe I could like eat something else, like maybe I could like get a little bit of like sustenance, you know, like our food was like used as like a bargaining chip, and so was our sleep. So we were always like food deprived and sleep deprived, like constantly.
So what they was doing, just making y'all walk through the woods, hike through the woods at all times?
Actually, this is the crazy part. There are programs that do make people do shit like that, like go out in the woods and hike. And actually, at many times, I wished that we were doing that kind of shit. We were literally stuck in a house, like a house like the width of a fucking trailer, and there was so many of us, and everything we did was in this fucking house. I mean, the walls were sweating all the time because there were so many people crammed up in it. And all the shit that we were doing, basically, was just crazy ass, like, cults. Like, everything that we did was to make the cult stronger. So basically, we would write things on pieces of paper and hang them on the walls that say, you know, be good and don't do anything bad, like, think the right things. Like, it was creepy, man. Like, we used to talk to each other, and we could only say certain things. Like, there were different ranks, and like, when you got to certain ranks, you could talk about different stuff. Like, even our communication was on lockdown. Okay, let me explain this, which I haven't really explained yet. We had kids all over the house. They were called expediters. That was one of the ranks, and the expediters held clipboards, and they actually were standing around the house recording everything that was going on around them. Like, so you could look at them like they were genuinely. These are the snitches right here, holding the clipboards to write every single thing that they see that's not allowed. So you're sitting in a room and you see 7-8 people with clipboards, and they're looking around the room all the time writing stuff down. But here's the thing: at some point, you're gonna end up in that position too, where you're the guy writing that shit down. And if you hand in that shit empty, if you're like, I'm not snitching on anybody. Like, here it is. Like, what do you think's gonna happen, you know? Like, your life's gonna be miserable. So people just went with it.
So let me ask you, was it ever a kid who came in there and just went crazy and wouldn't go along with the program?
You know, that's a really good question, because there actually was. There was like, and I saw it with my own eyes, which is interesting because not everyone does, because it's pretty rare. Because the thing about Elan was, their kind of whole motto was like, you will not get kicked out of this place. Like, no matter how crazy you think you are, we've seen crazier, and we've already done the homework, you know, on that. So, and for the most part, they were right, because I saw kids coming in there trying to be real crazy, get knocked out real fast. I mean, real tough kids. And actually, as a side note, there were certain states that sent a lot of kids there, and one of those states was New York. It's particularly New York City. So I don't know what deal Elan had with New York City, but there was a ton of people, specifically from schools and districts in New York City, Brooklyn, and Manhattan, who were sending kids to Elan from those places.
Who would be the one that knocks that kid out? Like, all of the kids would jump him or something?
There was like different ranks. So everything was called strength, like strength, like muscle strength. So we had 3 different ranks. It was like non-strength, strength, and high strength. And if you were a high strength, you basically had a license to beat the shit out of whoever you wanted. So like, if somebody was having a problem and they saw someone doing some shit, like if someone was like, no, fuck you, I'm not doing this shit, and it was time to take that person out, pretty much the high strength in the house would just take them out. And there was high strength girls and high strength boys. So if a girl did it, the high strength girls took her out. If the boys did it, if a boy did it, the high strength boys did. And it was like, there's no rules. It's just get this guy. It pretty much I did it to plenty of kids. Plenty of kids did it to me, and I did it to plenty of kids. And the name of the game is get them zip tied. You know what I mean? Because once you're zip tied, you can't do shit. So that's pretty much what we did. We had zip ties. If you fucked around in that place, you ended up zip tied, and then you ended up in the corner. Okay, but anyway, You asked me earlier about a crazy kid, like a kid who just said, I don't give a flying fuck about any of this bullshit. We did have a couple kids like that. I saw 2 kids like that, but one in particular I'll talk about because it was interesting. I was like, damn, this kid just did this. This kid went to the corner and would basically just wait for motherfuckers to get tired, and then he'd just jump up and attack them. And what happened is he did it so much that they started putting bigger kids on him, kids who could fight him back, obviously. Or they put double kids on him. So there'd be 2 kids on him. Like, there'd be 2 kids watching him 24 hours a day, is what I mean. Because remember, us watching kids was part of the program. It was part of us being sleep deprived. And we watched kids 24 hours a day. We watched them while they slept. Like, we didn't go to sleep at some point, and some staff came and watched everyone. Like, kids counted other kids 24 hours a day, all through the night. So there'd be 2 kids watching this kid while he slept. But sometimes he's pretending to sleep, gets up with the chair and maybe smashes a couple kids. But by that point, see, we had this thing called Chief. We'd yell, Chief! So one of the kids would just scream, Chief, as soon as the kids started fighting, and then like 10, 11 high strength would run up the stairs. Now it's like you versus like 10 kids, you're not going to win. But this kid kept doing that, yeah? It was like he was relentless. Like, he did it for like 15 months. So for like 15 months, this kid was in isolation, fighting motherfuckers. I was there, man. I fought the kid plenty of times. You know what I mean? Which was sad because we were actually cool with each other. Like, we didn't have a problem with each other, but that was just the way it was in Elan. I didn't blame him. I mean, you put a kid who's 16 into isolation, not just isolation, you tell him to sit in a corner for 24 hours a day, sleep in the corner, eat in the corner. These people turn into animals, man. Like, I seen people kids threw their shit at me. Kids jerked off and threw it at me. I mean, everything that you could do to fuck someone up with, kids did to me while I was watching them in that place. You know, it was horrible, man. These were kids that, maybe 6-7 hours before that, they were telling me like something about their life, Like, we were talking, like, they know I'm a prisoner too. I mean, I'm a prisoner, you're a prisoner. I gotta watch you because that's my job right now. Because, like, you know what it comes down to, man? When you're locked up and you have no time, because that's another thing. We didn't have sentences. They didn't say, Joe, you're in for 6 months. Mike, you're in for 12. In this place, we were just there until they decided to let us leave. That was it. Like, there was no sentence. You were gonna stay there. Who
decided that, though? The people who ran the program, or your parents could call and be like, yo, send my kid home? Like, how did that work?
The way that it worked is, there's 2 things. One, you're at the mercy of the people who work there, because they've got your parents brainwashed too. I mean, remember, you're not even talking to your parents. You're reading from scripts when you talk to your parents. And these people are calling your parents and telling them all kinds of shit, about how great it is, about how much you're changing, you know what I mean? So the parents, they had on lockdown. Sometimes I think that's what the staff's job was. The kids' job was to watch the other kids, and the staff's job was to watch the parents. And that's why it kind of was like an ingenious system. I mean, it was horrible that I went through it, and I'm not happy about it, but on some level, I could admire how twisted it was. Like, that's pretty clever. Like, they designed a system where that nobody could watch, where they had a monopoly on your calls, on your letters, on visits. They had a monopoly on everything. And what they decided to do was they decided to spend no money and have the kids do everything. The kids cleaned, the kids cooked, the kids guarded the other kids, the kids did therapy with the other kids. The staff, what did they do? They just brainwashed the parents, you know what I mean? And the money, how much money would you make when you're getting $50,000 a kid a year? And my house had 60 kids in it.
How many?
And
Oh, they get the 50 grand regardless. Either they get it privately or they get it from the state.
Yes, which is insane. So it wasn't just wealthy parents; it was states funding it, school systems funding it, and all kinds of crazy. Like it's foster programs having a partnership with it. Like it's nuts. Like this dude built a real empire when he made this place. It's like he really designed something that was like self-sustaining, you know, like he built a little world that could sustain itself, like because like I said, we secured ourselves.
You said that dude that made the program was a kid that was in the program himself before?
Yeah, like I talk a little bit about how, and you can actually research the guy. His name is Joe Ritchie. He died actually. But he's also a very interesting person. Like if you look him up, like there's some people who wrote articles about him that are very interesting online. So he was a very strange person who also had some drug problems, some problems with crime, and ended up in different programs. And then I guess he just said he saw dollar signs, you know. I mean, you know, the way I see it, if you have no morals, you can make lots of money. I mean, if you just say to yourself, I don't give a fuck about nothing. There's plenty of ways to make a lot of money, but I mean, it means you're a piece of shit, you know. So that's what this dude did.
So in your opinion, though, now that it's all said and done, with it, I mean, you know, now that you're an adult, was that place a cult, or was it actually aiming at some type of behavior modification where they patting kids on the back like, all right, man, you made it through. Stay in touch. We love you. Go home. You don't have to be a staff here. We proud of you. Or was it just a cult?
You know what? They were basically like the last thing that you said, like all those kind of nice things that you would expect, that kind of a positive reinforcement. They would say all that at the end if you did it, if you went through it the right way. But then you'd never hear from them again. They said, oh, we're gonna keep in touch. Give us a call. You know, you did so great. They said all that shit to me, man. And I was ghosted, you know, because I'm fucking gone now. What do they care? And one of the things too was, it actually, strangely enough, it took me a long time to accept that it was a cult, and that's why I call it a cult, because for a long time I thought, nah, man, I was just in a treatment center, you know, a fucked up one, but that's where I was. But actually, as I kind of started thinking about it more and researching it, things like that, it was like the things that we used to do, like, were very strange. Like the way I spoke there was strange. Like we used to have this thing called the Elan philosophy. It was like 15 or 16 lines, and we used to read it every night all together, like all chanting it together and stuff. We had these groups all the time, and they were called encounter groups. And basically, it was like we'd scream at each other, but there were rules. So, like, we'd sit in a circle and we'd start screaming at one another. So remember, we're screaming at each other in these general meetings, but we're also screaming at each other in these groups now, and we're following all these kind of weird rules and rituals that clearly didn't make any sense, but maybe they were used in the 70s, and they just never stopped using them because, like I said, the place never really got there's never like a fresh pair of eyes that came in. So it really did feel like a cult. Like it really did feel like its own unique world, and it took me a while to actually accept that. Like,
do you feel sometimes those feelings, like in your adult life now, when somebody does something that you don't like, do you resort back to those feelings of the way they made every kid just yell? Because that's psycho shit. Like making all those kids. I don't want to stray off topic, but it reminds me of when my kid was in kindergarten and she had a psycho teacher that I found out was making all of the other kids, when one kid did something bad, she would ask all of the other kids, hey kids, is that nice? And all the other kids would be like, shame on you, such and such, or whatever. Bro, I played myself not suing them motherfuckers for that. I don't care if they did it once or twice. That psycho shit to be making 5-year-olds chastise and gang up on another 5-year-old. You understand what I'm saying? So,
I do.
nowadays, now that you're an adult though, like, do you feel like you still have some of those teachings in you that they taught you at that place?
That's a real interesting question, man. I kind of do, you know, like, not to get too, like, you know, personal, but it's like, I have, like, some pretty shitty tendencies, like I can hear the voices of, like, that place in my head sometimes, like, when I'm like in conflict, like with my wife, or like I'm getting mad about something, like I can hear, like, in my head, like, it's real disturbing shit, man. It's like what I feel. It's like, I don't want to say Nazis, but it's like just the kind of idea where it's like there's only one right answer. Like, I feel that sometimes. Like, I'll be getting angry, and then I'll feel this, like, these Elan voices, and they're just like, this is the only answer there is. Like, there's no other answer. That has to be the only one. And I think in my head, like, nah, man, that's fucked up. Like, that's not the way reality works, you know? Like, not in anger. You know what I mean? Like, if you're angry about something, there's usually multiple perspectives to anger. But if you're angry and some voice in your head is telling you, like, you're angry and there's no other answer to this except for yours, like, that's it. Like, I have to, like, fight that back. Like, I'm like, dude, no. Like, I do not want that in my head. And I hear it always in the context of Elan. Like, I can feel that it's coming from that age, because, you know, you know, Laz, you know, because I'm a big fan of yours, and I've been listening to you for a long time, since you started. So I know that you also have spoken about how, you know, when you first off, when you put people in isolation, that does something to their brains that's very different. Like, if you put someone in a room by themselves, people don't understand, because they're sitting on their couch right now listening to this. But when someone takes away your freedom and forces you into a place, a small box, and tells you to sit there or to be there alone, it does not take long for some other world, other dimension shit to start happening in your head. And then again, something that you also know about is you combine that with someone who's the age of 16 or 17 or 18, a developing brain, man.
It's lifetime. That they proved it in the court of law already, man. It's lifetime effects. You will live with those effects for the rest of your life if you experienced any form of isolation or confinement in your youth like that. But solitary confinement, it has deadly effects. You understand? So half the criminals that's running around the streets right now, 30-something years old, committing crimes, trust me, you could trace their history back to solitary confinement as an adolescent.
I believe it. I definitely believe it. I mean, for me, it's interesting because I would say solitary confinement was worse than the ring, and the ring was pure violence. I mean, it wasn't violence on the terms of like a jail violence, and I am thankful for that.
Yeah, but people die in a real boxing ring. In real boxing is dangerous. You get hit the wrong way, you can die or suffer brain damage. So if you're making a kid fight 12 different people and he's taking, bro, you are suffering some type of concussion, headgear or no headgear. You're not meant at 16 years old to be fighting 12 rounds, 11, 10 rounds, 3 minutes at a time. After 3 minutes, you gasping for air fighting people. You understand what I'm saying? So that was a form of straight torture.
Yeah.
I mean, that's torture.
That is, and a kid did die, basically from getting hit to the head so many times. If you go to the Wikipedia for Elan, it's on there. Like, you'll see a kid was basically just smashed in his head so many times in the same spot. He just was over, and you know, which is insane. But it's like, but you know what? What I was thinking was, like, as crazy as it sounds, like, isolation almost is worse than the violence, which you wouldn't assume, really. You would think violence, but you know, it's like the Native Americans. You know, I heard that they used to just, if they wanted to do the worst thing to someone, they would just, like, abandon them. It'd be like, tribe would leave them, and that was apparently like the worst thing that could happen to a person.
Yeah, I mean, you know, isolation is so bad. You got people that they want to fight, get stabbed and cut and do all of that just to have some human contact. Like, dude will start a trouble, jump on you in the middle of a shower run or something. He don't got no beef with you. But because he's been deprived of human contact for so long, he just wants to, I don't care if it's stabbing, cutting, or fighting, he wants to have some form of human contact in exchange. You understand? So that's how solitary could be worse than violence. Like, that shit make you go crazy, bro. It's not, when you're a kid, you can't, maybe as an adult, even as an adult, solitary confinement is torture. You understand? It's torture, because I've seen people go to the box for shit that they didn't really do. But the police thought that they did it, and they sent the dude to the box for 30, 60 days. Like, that shit is torture. But imagine a young-ass 16, 17-year-old mind that can't stop moving. You could barely sit still at those ages. And they put you in a damn box for 23 hours a day, locked down. 24, really, because dudes like me, I wasn't getting up to go to a cage wreck at 5 in the morning. You understand what I'm saying? I'm trying to sleep this whole shit away. So it's like basically you in there for 24 hours a day, bro. Your mind starts playing tricks on you. You start going a little crazy, and you'll never really be the same after some shit like that.
Yep, that's exactly right. I mean, it's almost interesting, you know. It's almost like I said. I mean, it's messed up, but it's also kind of an interesting aspect of humans. Like, we need other people.
That's a fact.
Feel that energy.
That's a fact. That's an absolute fact.
Yeah, man, it's very interesting stuff.
But, yeah, bro, I'm sorry that you had to go through that, man. I mean, I'm sorry you had to go through that if you a listener out there and you went through that. In reality, kids were being abused, bruh. And I'm sure it's all type of abuse that went on in there that we don't know about.
That's right. Actually, there's you know, I said there wasn't really sexual abuse or violence, things like that. But remember, I was only in one house for a small period of time, and there was 3 houses, and there was actually even more houses back in the day. And the place had been open since the 70s, so 70s, 80s, 90s. They didn't close till 2011. And countless stories are online that, I mean, I'm hoping my story can reach a lot of people so they can see that these places exist and that there's other places like this that are still open. But there's also so many stories from other people, other people my age, or other people who finally got out of the place and said, "Hey, I gotta talk about this. I gotta tell somebody, because this shit was crazy." So you know, I'm hoping too that, you know, people will Google that. You know, Google the other survivor stories, because like there's so many of us.